Uh, that's one of the things that I've forgotten to do last time, and I could kick myself because I've just recently gone to the Zoom platform for going live on Facebook, which anybody out there looking to do some live streaming from or to the Facebook, Zoom is your platform. Zoom, brought to you by Zoom. Um, Today on Under the Hood, thank you for joining us, for anyone who's actually here yet. Um, I really, I've been excited about this for a long time. And we had to, wait, what did you say?
Me both.
Oh, well, duh. Um, is my good friend, Soprano, Jennifer Forni. I am so glad that you are here with us. I feel like I should have like a sound machine that's like box applause, like if you were to like walk on to like a set for like Jimmy Fallon, like Tonight Show or something. I think that would be really cool. Now I'm going to try to keep the one challenging thing about doing the interview on Zoom is that um, people's comments can sometimes easily get lost. So I've got the two windows open.
Okay.
Hopefully I will see your comments. So please feel free to share and ask questions.
Oh,
Now I'm going to try. Oh, please mute that because it's 20 seconds behind.
there we go.
You're good. You're good. We're all good. Yeah. But that's what you do. You share that link to your Facebook page, and then that way your friends can see it, your family members can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like very nervous about the sharing portion.
Just it says share to your profile. You should be good to go. Well, cheers to my friend, however many thousands of miles away you are. You're in Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah, I think I'm about 700 from.
Not even a thou. That's
Not
good. That's good. Well, Jennifer, did you always know that you were meant for the stage? And if so, how did that journey begin for you?
well. I think a clear indicator that maybe I was meant for the stage and specifically opera was my dad told me the story of Madame Butterfly. And so at like 5 years old,
That's kind of messed up.
well, my dad loved opera, so
Okay.
it was. I grew up with opera, and I used to. I don't know if everyone remembers these or had them, but I'm a kid of the '80s, and we had those like zip up nighties made of like
Onesies, like it was a onesie, right?
a onesie, yeah. And I remember having this like zip up fleece polyester nighty thing, and I would take the shears off the drapes, take a shear and take a pillow and like wrap it around my body like it was a kimono. And then I would do this comedic death in the living room at like 5 years old, where I would like stab myself to Madame Butterfly and then throw a couch pillow on the floor and die onto it.
Wow.
So at a young age, I really liked opera and I really liked performing. So, but it wasn't till I would say about first grade actually, that I had this amazing music teacher named Mrs. Jones. And she was a former opera singer, and she would say, "Hello, kids, hello, come in." Just
That's amazing.
She was so cool. And I remember I was in first grade. I was like six, seven.
Yeah.
Or six in first grade. I said, "Listen, Miss Jones, listen to what I can do." And I went, "Ah!" Like something like that.
Okay.
I remember her going, "Oh, wow, Jenny, that's really good. Okay, go sit down." And then she shows up at my parents' house and she's like, "Your child does not sing like a normal kid." She's like, we should like when she gets a little older, give her some voice lesson because I was 6 and
Wow.
so it kind of started at an early age and
I have to say that you win the award thus far of like how early somebody actually had not only like the influence, but also like an outward, sort of person that had recognized like, you got some chords in there. You got something going on that we need to look further into.
just a shout out about Miss Jones. She was my only choir teacher that wasn't like telling me to be quiet, to sing with less vibrato, to like make me an alto because it was too loud in the sopranos. Like I love Miss Jones.
Now, to let's say in defense of your junior high and your high school choir directors, assuming you were in choir during those years,
Yeah.
your your choir structure, I'm guessing, in elementary school was a bit more everyone sing unison. I mean, what you weren't trying to like harmonize an 8-part harmony where a voice of your size might stick out should you use a little more
Whatever.
soprano volume.
Whatever. Miss Jones was amazing.
I no no not listen. Cheers to Miss Jones if you're out there watching.
Jill.
So okay, so you go on to junior high.
Yeah.
You keep with the choir.
So yeah, I stayed with choir.
Did
I
you ever do any like theatrical stuff, like musical theater things or
actually
training?
barely anything. I never really had much interest in musical theater. I tried out for West Side Story and got cast as Consuela.
Hmm.
So I did West Side Story, but most of it was just yeah, it was I mean on my own I was singing like opera and I started taking lessons with Miss Jones around like 10 years old. I did that for like a year or so and then I was like I don't want to take voice lessons. And then I got with another dude when I was 13 who gave me Carmen.
Like habanera or like the
And he tells me he's like, "Here's this aria. It's Italian. Why don't you give it a try?" And so I'm like, okay. And so I take it home, and my sister's in French.
Carmen's in French.
Oh yeah, news alert. So I take it home, and my sister, who's in French, she's looking at it. She goes, I don't know. I think this is French. I was like, no, he said it's Italian. L'amour. um,
Okay.
so I worked on Carmen a little bit, and it was just some of the stuff was so weird, and I'm not gonna lie, I thought he was a fraud. I'm not gonna name him, but he was
Well,
just
no need to name it, but anyone who gave a 13-year-old Carmen to take a glance out,
yeah.
there might be some question marks behind
It was a little ridiculous.
the validity in their teaching.
So then I
Um,
took a 2-year hiatus from voice lessons
but you
to
were still in choir.
I was still in choir.
Okay.
So it wasn't until I was 15, a lady came to our choir, and her name is Monica Harris. So if you're watching, hey Monica, and she said, "Hi, I am a voice teacher. I am going to be here giving lessons during the week. I'm an Oberlin grad, and if anyone is interested, like, come talk to me." So, so I went and met with Monica, and I remember like one of the first lessons, she's like, "Okay, this is not your voice." Because I was singing O mio babino caro, and
Okay.
I was like 15 years old. "O mio babino caro." And she's like, "This is pretty. It's just very. You're very. It sounds a little manufactured." And I remember thinking, "What does she know? I'm just the.
You're like, you don't know my voice, okay?
You don't know me." So
What what do you think influenced you to have that type of sound at 15?
I had been singing along with opera since I was 5.
So all of the recordings that your dad would play, you
Oh,
would just, huh?
yeah, my dad would play these recordings. I left this out. We moved into a house that was built in 1897,
Oh
and
wow.
like I'm gonna restore this house. So he was always working on the house, blasting opera, and he would say, my dad's like big bass voice, and he'd be like, Jenny, sing along, Jenny. And so I would be like 4 and 5, like helping my dad. I remember like rolled over a paint light socket with like a roller and stuff.
Yeah.
But good thing that didn't electrocute me. But so yeah, I would just sing along to. I remember I was like obsessed with Una Voce Poco Fa. I didn't know any of the words, but you know. And the other one I was like obsessed with Kill del Sogno from La Rondine, and that was my dad's favorite. So I was singing that stuff all the time at home.
Wow. And
And
then your ear at that age, when you got to 15 and you had your private voice lesson, you were like, here's how it goes, and this is what it is.
yeah, you just don't know me. You just don't know.
And how did that go? Did you go back for another lesson with her?
I did. And she started having me do some NG things, nya, 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 that kind of stuff. And we did this one exercise. It was an NG exercise. No, and we kind of, the way we did it, she recommended a raised tongue blade. And we would go, just let it go,
Yeah,
release.
yeah,
I remember like the first time we did that, I heard like, I don't want to say I heard because I'm always an advocate of don't try to listen to yourself,
right.
go for sensation, but I
Yep.
heard, felt something completely different and it sounded so much more outside my body than my previous singing.
Right. Well, everybody always says the thing is like if it sounds big in your head, it's probably not correct, right? But once it feels smaller and once it, then the people who are listening to you actually get to hear your sound instead of you keeping it all trapped inside
Yeah,
your
yeah.
head.
And so just feeling that and also seeing her face of like, whoa, because I felt like I was kind of smacked her in the face with some sound, whereas yeah, it was just all for me before.
Yeah.
Um, and so I thought, okay, maybe there's something to this.
Mm-hmm.
maybe she's like this much right. Ah, like now that I teach people to sing, I'm like, oh God. Like I think back to myself, what a tool. So sorry, Miss May.
So you went through the rest of high school studying with her?
Yeah, I studied with Monica for 3 years, and she mentioned what was it called? Vocal Academy for High School Students that Oberlin put on, and
Because she was a graduate of Oberlin.
mhm. And she was actually a graduate from the studio I ended up being a part of. Um,
Oh,
yeah, and which is amazing because like Oberlin is in Ohio, and I grew up near Seattle, and you know, um,
halfway across the country.
yeah. So I auditioned and I got in, and it was actually like the coolest thing ever because nobody my age sang opera. Nobody liked opera.
That you hung out with.
Yeah. None of the people that I went to school with, I went to a big school too, and just none of them were into opera.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, and in fact, I almost feel like sometimes I got made fun of for liking opera and singing opera.
Yeah.
And I remember too, Monica, she's like, you just look like an opera singer. I mean, the size of your noggin. And I was like,
What are you trying to say?
like 15, you're like, my head size is normal.
Right. I can only imagine.
Uh,
How far outside of Seattle were you?
like 35 minutes, 35, 40.
Oh, so growing up, did you ever get to go see shows at Seattle Opera?
No.
Oh,
No, we never did. We never went to stuff like that. I mean, I wish we had, but
yeah.
never went to stuff
Oh,
like that.
interesting. I wonder if your dad was aware and him being such an opera lover. I mean, Seattle Opera was such a huge. I mean,
Yeah.
back in those days, that was like prime Spate Jenkins doing the whole Wagnerian thing and such an incredible impresario 30 minutes down the road. But you had all the great recordings to listen to at home.
Yeah, my
So
dad. I think my dad was like, we're not spending money on that.
I've already spent my money. It's right here.
Yeah, here's the recordings. This house is like a freaking money pit. Like, we're not going to an opera.
Right.
Uh,
So
so
you went halfway across the country or three-quarters of the way over to Ohio and you attended this was like what, between your junior and senior year or something?
I went what was it, my junior summer going into senior, and then I went my senior summer going, yeah.
And what was that program like?
It was awesome. I mean, it was like all high school kids, and we did some coaching. We did studio classes. We did like music theory. Oh my god, kill me.
Was that your first introduction with understanding like
Yeah,
how yeah,
I
go
had
ahead.
never done music theory before.
Right.
It was very hard.
Yeah.
Sorry if anyone is wondering what I'm doing. My cat just jumped on my lap, so
Oh
that's
yeah.
what I'm doing right here.
Is that
um,
Luna?
this is Luna, a little baby. Look at the camera. Don't
Oh,
be shy. She's
I
so
think she
sweet.
looks like she was born from an alley cat, but that's
None
okay.
of that. Don't
Yeah.
don't
We
say
won't mention that. I won't mention my ideas about your cat.
that. But yeah, so we went, and it was like 2 weeks of young people excited about opera, talking about opera, performing art songs together. We did a mini recital at the end of it. We got to coach with like the Oberlin people. I mean, it was so awesome. And I remember like going and being stuck on some things. Like I sang, what was it? The Ave Maria, the Gounod, B flat at the end,
Bach, yeah.
trying to get into that, and just things that my teacher that I ended up studying with, Miss May, Dawn May, just
Because
little.
you ended up doing your undergraduate at Oberlin after doing the program there. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. So I go to this vocal academy. I'm like in love with the school. The campus was so pretty. Like it was such a great experience, right? So I say, well, I'm gonna audition for Oberlin for college.
To
And
who?
huh?
To who? Who did you say that to?
Like to my parents and
Oh, okay.
and they're like, okay. And then my like that was the only school I auditioned for
That was
because
it.
yeah. And I was like, well, I was told it's really good and I liked it so much and I just think I should go there. And if I don't get in, this is my plan. If I don't get in, I'll go to community college for a year and study more languages and then I'll just try again. So
Solid.
that was the goal. And like that was the only school I applied for. And thank God I got in. And yeah, so
So Dawn May, you say.
Dawn May. Mm-hmm.
And so what sort of things now wait, let's back up for a second. Monica, the teacher that you had from high school, was also a student of Dawn's.
Mm-hmm.
So when you went into undergraduate at Oberlin studying with Dawn, was it kind of a seamless transition? Like you'd already been working on the stuff that Monica had helped you get started with, and so you were able to.
It was pretty fluid. I would say the one thing that they differed on a little bit was breath and how they, you know, go about teaching breath support. That was a little different.
Sure.
But other than that, yeah, it was pretty. I mean, everyone's going to teach it differently, even if it's kind of the same information,
Right. Right.
so
Right.
terminology
Yeah.
maybe,
Different vocabulary. Sure.
vocab and approach. But yeah, I just felt like I felt both of those teachers gave me just a really just bel canto technique. Nothing crazy, like jumping through hoops to get this sound, or you gotta like do this and put your leg over your head and like.
Well, yeah. So for people who might not know what bel canto technique means, how would you kind of sum that up? What do you mean when you say bel canto? By the way, before you answer that, Bob Conklin says, "Great to see you, Jen. I'm loving this. Thanks for hosting her, Weston. Good to see you too. Great to see you too, Bob." He says, "Now, how about the two of you do the Violetta Germont duet from Act Two of Traviata for your adoring fans?"
uh,
Okay, here we go. So, folks, here we go. No, I'm just kidding. Mon amicella Valerie.
Sony, right?
There you
Okay.
go. Anyway, sorry. How would you describe that bel canto technique that you felt that Dawn and Monica had sort of given you that foundation of?
Well, they talk about different schools of singing, right? You've got like German school and French school and Italian school. And I feel like her style was Italianate. It was a sing in the mask type of singing,
Yeah.
approach. There was, we were kind of talking about this the other day about how now you're not supposed to use certain terminology or certain things in teaching. They've kind of changed some things. Like I was told recently that a person that went to an audition they said, we don't use the term mask anymore.
Who said that?
It was like someone from like New York University or something told a friend of mine, we don't use the term singing in the mask anymore, which I was like, well, I mean, I still say it. So, okay.
Well, I mean, I think the reason that anybody uses words like mask
Mm-hmm.
or head voice
Mm-hmm.
or chest voice is because that's where you feel the resonance
Right.
happening in your body. So when you put on a mask, we're talking about this area here, right? And so if you're singing in a way that allows for resonance
Like
to
vibration.
vibrate, yeah, I mean, what do they call it?
Just
Nose, eyes, upper cheek area? Oh
so
no.
we talked about the mask. We talked about chiaroscuro, the brightness and the darkness. A lot of, the brightness and the darkness, like the front space, the back space sort of thing. We talked about appoggio, of course, going to the school, the home of Richard Miller. We were
Well,
going to,
wait, talk about, so you got to remember, not everybody knows these words. You're using fancy Italian words. When you say appoggio, what do you mean?
the Italian word to press or to lean.
Right.
Um, and what that means, or how I view this, the appoggio really talks about the entire system. But when I really think about appoggio, is your appoggio engaged, all that kind of stuff. I think about those muscles running down the front of your torso, the solar plexus and stuff, and how when we when we laugh and we're laughing and we're like, oh god, my stomach's starting to burn, right? Because your muscles are engaging. And or if you are lifting something heavy, you can feel that engagement in your stomach and in your core.
Mm.
I like to joke, if you're pooping, people, like, these are the things anyone that's not in voice lessons or opera, this is the kind of stuff that ends up getting talked about, because these are the sensations that do go along with singing, like that engagement of the abdominals,
Well,
right?
so many people, let's say this, so many people who are not familiar with how it is that we're able to do what we do,
Mm-hmm.
but they are aware that in other art forms of singing, they use microphones.
Right.
And they're like, how do you do that? How do you make so much noise without even a microphone? You guys aren't mic'd? How
Yeah.
do you do that? Well, we learn to use our bodies in a way that allow for the type of projection that you do end up hearing when you go hear an opera, right? And that requires you to be able to project your sound over an 80-piece orchestra and into a 4,000 seat hall, and
Right.
let the back last row of the upper family circle hear you, and in order to do that, you have to find a way that includes the full instrument, which has very little to do with what you feel here in the throat.
Right.
I think when you sing well, you don't feel anything here.
You don't feel that. You shouldn't be feeling that. There should be no, because I talk about good tension. There's no good tension in here. Like,
Right.
don't feel it. If you feel tightness or disengaging, then something's not quite lining up.
Yeah, David Savlier says maybe they're scared of singing in the COVID mask. We don't say the word mask because we're talking about the COVID mask. Yeah, that's solid point, Dave.
COVID.
And Christopher Doran says lower back support is key. So yeah, absolutely. So you've got to make certain that when you, let's say this, and this is something that I've recently, I'm teaching at UMKC now, and I'm working with a lot of younger singers, and explaining and putting into words and creating a detailed sort of process for something that you have become familiar with over decades of use. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky, like, okay, how am I gonna, okay, so yeah, okay, let's break it down like this. And the way I look at it is like, in order to use your entire instrument when you sing, you have to grant access to your entire instrument. And I believe that that begins with how you breathe. So
Mm-hmm.
if you breathe and you imagine, being in a choir situation as someone going, taking that little choral catch breath, that's not
Yeah.
going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So as a soloist, we really have to find a way to allow that lower torso to release.
Mm-hmm.
And when that releases, I certainly feel it on the sides as well as around in the back.
Right.
And once that release, it essentially like allows or grants access to the full body, then using your word, well, not yours, but you brought it up, appoggio, then it
Mm-hmm.
feels like you do have something really low that you can lean down upon. And that, in essence, is what support is, right? That's how we project our sound. That's how we find power in our voice. It has, like I said, it has nothing to do with
No,
using muscles in the throat. I mean, correspondingly, they coordinate in a way that we don't even, um,
we're not physically aware of.
right, right.
You were saying, like, trying to find the words and all that to talk, to teach this to somebody else. Why do you think poop talk comes up? You do anything to try to get someone to understand a sensation, right?
Right.
I've also been told that appoggio can be like if you're giving birth, that kind of abdominal engagement. Now I haven't had children, so I can't really talk about that.
Well, I think and that starts to open it up. I talked about my students about this all the time. I say, in order for us to really find a difference in our sound, we can't just like kind of go there. We have to like grossly over exaggerate an idea and let's see what that does. I mean, that's like when somebody says, okay, do it again, but like imitate an opera singer when you do that.
Yeah.
There's all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I can be free and be silly and and it's like
Don't do that.
any sound that you can make is your own sound, right? Now it might need to be adjusted one way or the other to find that balance of chiaroscuro that you mentioned. But, so often I find kids coming from a choral background, there's just so, and trust me, I'll say it again, my mom and my stepdad were my influences in even getting me into classical music and starting and igniting my passion. So I actually love choral singing.
Mhm.
However, there is a significant difference between choral singing and solo singing. And I feel like so often kids come from just having a choral background, and then we're trying to really just introduce the whole idea of what it is
Like,
to create this type of operatic sound that you're talking about.
I almost feel like choral singing should come after, like, way down the road after you learn how to sing.
Mm,
Because as someone who's taught in university and whatnot, I have these kids come to me after hours of choral singing, and they're like so hoarse because they've been singing in their throat and like just blowing air on pitch.
yeah,
It would be very beneficial in a way to learn how to sing and then go into a choir.
yeah,
Um, because it's like I was like, I don't expect you to go into a choir and just bellow out like I did when I was in high school. But I don't expect you to do that and to be all like full of vibrato and all that. But maybe instead of you could go you can still straight tone, but
yeah,
it doesn't have to be in the
yeah,
you know.
yeah. That's a tricky balance, and I think that I mean, well, never mind 2020. I was just going to say I really respect our music educators at every level, but
Mhm.
certainly those at the junior high and high school levels where they're teaching these kids and simultaneously introducing them to classical music, but also to try to create a sound that's sort of a balanced tone from everyone that creates this. I mean, it's a job that I think would be very intimidating to me, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
not even to mention, what those folks are having to do now with this format of Zoom and
Right.
social distance choir and singing through masks and everything else. But
Friends of mine that teach in high school, and I have a friend here. His name's Danny Gutierrez, and he was up for Teacher of the Year of Missouri a couple years ago. I mean,
oh wow,
he went into one of our schools here, one of our really underfunded schools. I forget. I don't know too much about public school systems, but it was one that was not getting the funding that some of the other schools were getting, and they had like no choir program, and just completely transformed it and had the kids singing in Russian in this little.
gosh,
I mean, they became like insanely just elevate. I mean, they were all over the place singing in all these competitions, and they had never really sung before. But he comes from a classical background, and something he's doing though now, I think, is there's I was saying the teachers and what they're dealing with. I don't think masks are mandatory at his school, and so he's making the choice now to go and teach or not. And he has a family, so it's a horrible position to be put into.
you mean if you want to keep your job you
Yeah,
have to be
keep your
here?
job,
Yeah,
support your family, or be protect yourself somehow and not stand in front of 60 kids without a mask screaming at you in a choir. Like, I don't
yeah,
know, it's a hard
that's
decision. I feel
that's
for
tricky.
I
Yeah,
feel for our educators,
that,
seriously.
that is tricky.
With a lot of teachers out there, teachers are amazing.
Yeah, no kidding. So moving on along, you were in your undergraduate, let's say, career. Did you have any performance opportunities within, like from your undergrad
Yeah, I was really fortunate. We did, well, first I was in the chorus of Alcina as a freshman. Um, so that was like my first time in a show. I think the second one I was in was Orpheus in the Underworld as Minerva. And then I got my big chance to be a leading lady my junior year as the Contessa in Le Nozze di Figaro. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, and that's actually, it was my junior year because I was like, oh, I don't know if I chose the right career path. I don't know if I should have went to singing school because my other big passion was always like science, and I always wanted to be an obstetrician gynecologist and like help women deliver babies. I've helped 4 friends of mine deliver babies. I
Oh wow, like as a doula, or I mean, did you?
kind of a pseudo doula. Yeah, they're like, would you be with me? I'm like, sure. Um, like one of my friends, I was like, okay, and we're gonna breathe, and 1, 2, and the doctor goes, "It's so cool you took Lamaze with your friend." And I said, "Oh, I don't know, I'm just doing singer breathing stuff."
You're like, I'm just flying off the top of my head here.
She goes, "Oh, well, just keep it up. This is good." And I was like, "Okay." Got
Wow.
to cut the umbilical cord. That was fun. Um,
Me too.
so I get to do the Countess. I wasn't originally cast. I got a call on New Year's Eve from our opera director that the other girl I wasn't coming back to school, and can you be back in like can you start rehearsals? We're gonna start in 2 weeks or something. It was
Mm.
something crazy, and I had never really done like a real role before, so I'm like learning the Countess in like 2 weeks. Just panicked, and uh, but yeah, we did the show, and I remember I was the second to last one to bow, and I come out for my bow, and I start to see people standing up, and I was like, oh
You and Larry Brownlee, right out of the gates, your first time singing a lead, for Larry when he was on the show, he said the first time that he ever sang, I think he was doing like a Nats competition or something. After he sang, everyone stood up. So you, first leading role, standing ovation. There you
no,
go.
sorry. But yeah, they started standing up, and I remember being so like, oh my God, they're standing for me, like so shocked. And I had never practiced a bow before. So any young singers out there, if you're gonna do a show, practice bowing before the show, because I have this humongo like dress.
Period style dress.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my God. And I tried to bow, and I'm like, and I didn't fall. I didn't fall, but I totally lost my balance and sidestepped like 2 steps over. And I was like, okay.
You're like, thank you.
But it was such a moment of like, it was a very exhilarating feeling.
I
And
bet so.
also like singing Dove Sono. And I was so fortunate. I mean, my first leading role was with Eve Queller. Um, in school, like
So
we had
Eve was like a guest conductor that came in to do it?
after. Mm-hmm.
Wow. For those of you who don't know, Eve Queller ran Opera Orchestra of New York and New York City for a number of years, and was known as just an amazing. I mean, in addition to that, of course, she conducted all over the world and at the Met and everything else.
She may, I could be wrong, but if I'm remembering correctly, I think she was the first woman to conduct in Europe too.
I don't know.
Somebody
I
can
mean,
back
what
if
I had the honor of working with her on a number of different projects, and I actually have a really funny story about Eve Queller since we're talking about Eve Queller. So, Opera Orchestra of New York performed at Carnegie Hall, and I was doing. Um, I actually had originally been cast as Metifio in L'Arlesiana by Chilea, and Mark Rucker was supposed to sing Baldassare. He ended up pulling out for some reason. I think he got an offer that he wanted to go do, and so they asked me if I'd like to sing Baldassare, which was, I think it's the Old Shepherd is how it's described in the score, and it's great. There's a big aria in the first act, Come due tizi accesi. It's great. Um, some great stuff with the ensemble. Latanya Moore was the soprano, and Giuseppe Filinotti was. I mean, it was a great cast. It was a Carnegie Hall. You know, it was a great role for me. Marianne Cornetti was the mezzo. I'm just unbelievable. Like, so at the end of the show, we're bowing and everything, and I was wearing, we wore formal wear, just a concert version, so I was wearing my tails, and I wore my prosthesis. And as we were standing at bows, Eve ended up to my right. And she went to take my hand. Giorgio Armandmi is what I named my prosthesis. And when she went to take my hand, she goes, "Oh, what's that?" in front of a completely packed house. And I'm like, "It's okay. It's okay. It's a fake hand. You can hold it. It's no big deal." Like, I'm just saying this to her on stage. Oh my God, it was so freaking hysterical. I was like, "Okay, and let's bow again before we forget." Yeah, so that's amazing. She was conducting Figaro at Oberlin for you guys.
Yeah. And she was amazing. I got to coach it with her. Um I was saying about this, like I'm sitting there singing Dove Sono with Eve in the orchestra, and she's just being like she was so amazing, like how supportive she was,
Mm,
uh, and how much liberty she allowed us to take and like choices to make as young singers. Like she didn't really I didn't feel like it was her version of the aria at 21 years old. She was like, "What are you doing with this? What are we gonna do here?" And I remember I put in this kind of like a subito, like a hit it piano crescendo. What is that called? Subito piano.
sure.
Yeah, like
Orthondo? I don't know.
yeah, and then the D conjunct.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I know that's like not how it's written, but she loved it. She's like, "I love that. Keep that. Let's keep that." She was great. And so I just remember sitting up there and like singing. You know, you have these moments as an opera singer when you're on the stage. Well, at least I feel this, by yourself, and you're singing something by yourself, and you've got this great orchestra down below, and it's just like a magic moment to be like quiet, to hear like the quietness around you, and it's just you. You can feel like, even though there's a whole bunch of people there, it can feel so like alone, but in a good way, like
Mm-hmm.
alone with this amazing music and alone with an amazing orchestra. I mean, I know that there are obviously people there, but it was just such a moment of like sitting there and singing this music and feeling these emotions that this character's feeling. And and even though there's pain, obviously the Countess is in pain. Um, it was an amazing feeling. And it was just like, ugh, it was one of those, oh, I'm in trouble feelings. This is addictive and I have to do this.
I mean, how cool is that? That like even at that age, not even what, maybe 20 years old, that you were being treated and you know
I felt respect.
spoken to as an artist as opposed to a singer.
Right.
And those are two very big things. I mean, there's a singer and there's an artist. And I tell my kids about this all the time. It's like nobody cares about what a singer has to say.
Hmm.
You know, singers, whatever. But
Right.
as an artist, something different happens. And I always remember hearing that. I can't remember who actually said that to me first. But I remember being like, I want to be an artist. What does that mean? And I was like, obviously, I'm not one because I don't know what that means yet. But I started really thinking about it. I started really contemplating like what that must mean, because to sing, okay, anybody can open their mouth and just like make sound, but like to be purposeful with that and to make artistic interpretations based on what the text means to you. And I think
Hmm.
for me, that was like the first big one, was like, oh, wait a minute, I have an opinion about how I feel about this poetry and how this character would be in this moment. And I was like, oh, I think I'm becoming an artist. I was but that's amazing that you were already, someone like Eve Queller is asking your opinion about what do you think? What do you That's incredible.
It was amazing. She made me feel at 21 years old, never doing a lead role before, respected. Um, and I think we need more of that.
Yeah.
I think we need more respect across the board in everything in life right now. I think people have lost respect for people for just, so much. There's so much pain. There's so many crazy things going on in the world right now. And um,
Yeah.
I think if we respect and cared about people, it wouldn't be happening as much. But when it
Agreed.
comes to singing, I mean, at the end of the day, you're the person standing on a stage in front of 1,000 people, like walking on a tightrope. And maybe what you need to do that should be respected. So you
Maybe.
fall and break your neck. I mean, it's just, I just think there could be like, and when you're in those situations, I mean, we've all been in that cast before where it was one of those magic casts, and it was a collaboration, and everyone is like respecting the work of everyone. Those are those shows that are magical.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the
I miss
best.
that. I miss that a lot.
I know.
So how'd you wrap up your senior year?
Senior year, what did we do? Oh, Dialogues of the Carmelites.
And were you in that?
I was Madame Ledouane,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that I love that show. When we come back, anybody that's watching this that wants to do Dialogues of the Carmelites, please call me. I love that show so much. I think it's so beautiful. We had an amazing director on it. Sally Stunkel is her name, and that show is so text based, obviously dialogues,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of those things where you have to communicate the story. And you should be doing that in everything you do, obviously, but especially dialogues, because it's often just, it's not like action packed until like the revolutionaries come in and stuff. But so much of it is it's just communicating these people and these stories and this dialogue. And I just think it's an incredible piece. So I got the joy of doing that show. Again, a show that's so painful, like so painful,
Doesn't
but
everybody die at the end?
and I'm like the first. I'm like, no, I'll go. I'm the first prioress at that point, a second prioress. So yeah, it's just it's so amazing. Like it's based on true events, and it's just amazing. And then I actually ended up staying at Oberlin a second year. I started a master's there.
Oh, okay.
They only offer that if you've been at the school. And so I started a master's there, and I got to do my master's year. I did the Sea Symphony by Vaughan Williams.
Yeah,
And
we were talking about that the other day. That was the last gig that I did before COVID shut down, was Sea Symphony, and it's just one of the most beautiful things.
oh,
Vaughan Williams, in my
so
opinion, is such
good.
lush beauty. It's incredible.
It's so lush. Alone on the beach at night. The
Yeah.
very like, can you stop singing my piece, please? And I was like, I've been working on my chest voice. I didn't really sing
There
as
you
bad.
go. There you go.
I loved it. I love Sea Symphony. I love anything Vaughan Williams. So I got the joy of doing that. And then at that time, my senior year and after my master's year, I had been a part of the Opera Theater of St. Louis Young Artist Program.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually what took me to my master's at University of Maryland, College Park, was I met the fabulous, amazing Mia M.
Jen.
Mia, hello, if you're watching. Love you so
Mia
much.
M is one of the most amazing musicians, people. I love her to death. We met when I was at Juilliard for the Opera Center. She was one of the coaches. She and Michael Baitzer were the two coaches that we all worked with on a regular basis. And she and I just like totally hit it off. And I remember her in one of these coachings. She like, Weston, give me your arm. And she was like, here. She like held my hand, and she was like, I just need more of this. And she kind of like put friction on my skin as she was like, I need that in the singing, right?
Yes.
And it was like,
Click.
it was so amazing what that was able to do for me. And I mean, such an incredible pianist. She was my pianist that I hired for all of those Maryland Horn Foundation recitals. Sorry, I just got really excited. I love Mia.
Yeah.
And now she's here she's in Houston at Rice. She's the new opera director.
What is not to love? I mean, it's amazing human, amazing musician. I mean, she's the
So anyway,
best.
you met her at Opera Theater St. Louis.
Yeah, and she's like, so Jen, I think that you should look at the University of Maryland. And I was like, okay, tell me about it. And what drew me to the program was it was all acting based. And I was like, wait, I don't have to do choir. It's like, So we did Shakespeare class, straight theater class, movement class. For 2 years, you did movement. For 2 years, you did dance. We did, I think I said a math class. We did improv. We did opera theater class. I mean, it was so much movement, acting, like the things you kind of might need when you're on a stage.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And I got to study with Dominic Cosa, incredible baritone.
Sure.
and totally old school technique. I remember my trial lesson with him. He's like, well, he's like, I really learned my technique from Marilyn Horne and Franny and Joan Sutherland. And, like, because they sang together, and like we all do as singers, we talk technique and discuss like, what are you doing here?
Well, sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. I mean, I have to say that one of the reasons that I had this premise to start this show was because all too often you're in a show with somebody and you go through that first sing through and you're like, God, I love the way you sing.
Mhm.
So amazing. And then what do you say? Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that. Well, hey, what's everybody doing for dinner? I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, maybe it gets to like, who do you study with? Oh, I
Right.
work with so and so. I was like, oh wow, I'd love to chat with you sometime about them, or whatever.
Right.
And maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, I don't know, but we never have the opportunity, in my opinion, to really get into it and have a better understanding of like, why is it that somebody sings the way that they sing? Like, what is it that creates that? You know, and it's a collaboration of everything that artist has experienced, right? And that's why I find these talks so interesting, is because, so you mentioned Monica studied with Don, and so then you went to study with Don, and then now you're at Maryland and you're working with Dominic Cosa.
I
Had
think
you hadn't had a voice lesson from a male before, yeah?
no,
And
no,
so what was
actually.
that like?
It was really good. I kind of wanted to work with a man in my grad school just to feel a different kind of energy
Hmm.
dynamic. And I just instantly hit it off with Dominic. And it's so funny though. Like I think back to my first lesson and how sometimes we can be, our biggest critics, and how we can be so hard on ourselves as singers. And I remember I didn't feel that the lesson was very good for me. Like I didn't do my best.
Mm.
And he really liked my singing. He was like, "You're fantastic. I love this, blah, blah, blah." And I thought, I can't believe he liked me. And I thought, like, crazy enough that maybe I shouldn't work with him because I wasn't good. like
Like, you thought because he liked you and you knew that you weren't at your best, that you thought he might not be the right person to study with because he thought that your mediocrity in your mind was good.
yeah, and I was like, what kind of crazy singer crap is that? So yeah, I was like, later on and going through that program, and that program was so supportive and such a collaboration, and it was all about being an artist and making choices and
Mm.
not just doing what you're supposed to do on stage, and I'm supposed to do it this way. And it was about making a choice and standing behind it. And like after that I realized like how silly I was being.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, going through that process, and I looked back to where I started and I was like, wow, like, thank God, he saw in me those things, and that I
Right.
guess I couldn't see in myself at the time.
And so often I find that to be true. The people
Yeah.
who are the biggest fans in us and that really are supporters of us, our champions, are the
Hmm.
ones that see something that we don't ever really see until
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
And more says, "Oh my God, Weston and Forney, hello friends."
Hey. Yeah. I just think so often we and I don't think you should put forth a bad product. Like I think you should always strive for your best.
Of course.
But sometimes, you just need to see like it as a whole, and not as just it was just the singing, and that's all that mattered, because that's not all that matters. I mean, look at some of the greatest singers that we listen to, and Collis and Frenny and Scotto and all those people. Like they had moments, some of those people more than others, that were like, oh, that was a little strident, or
Mm.
harsh sounding, or that didn't go off the way textbook it should go off.
Did you ever see those old Firestone Hour? Sorry to interrupt. Did you ever see those Firestone Hour recordings from like the 50s and 60s? They're all black and white videos. I've got one of Leonard Warren singing the Toreador. And it's like the cheesiest. Like, okay, well, today we have with us, baritone Leonard Warren, and it's like the camera zooms in and he's singing the Toreador song, and he totally gets lost. And after he sings the end of the first verse, he jumps to the end where it goes Toreado, but he instead of and the music of course went back because for the repeat, and he goes Tore, and like to see like I mean it doesn't get any better than Leonard Warren for me, but to see like someone like that like on video make that kind of mistake, it's like, oh, you're human. These people are humans.
We're human. I remember there's this one spot in the opera, L'Amico Fritz, on the recording with Pavarotti and Franny, and she's singing this one line, and she makes this like little mistake, and it's on the recording because I'm like following along with the score because I ended up doing that role, and I was like, she made a little mistake, like it was a little off, and I was like, Mirella Franny made a mistake. Oh my god! Like, and it made her like a human, because yeah. And so I just think sometimes we need to like look at the whole picture, and one little mistake, and that didn't mean that it was pointless. It was worth nothing. It was pointless because that didn't go perfectly,
Not at all. Yeah, of course.
Lady in the front row is crying, and like that's a win. You affected somebody. So
Totally. Oh, Brian emails with us. What's up, B?
hey.
Hey. So, all right. So you're at University of Maryland and you're working with Dominic Cossa and you're working with Mia M. And what kind of roles did you get to have there?
Oh, it was great. I did Fiordaligi my first year.
Wow.
My second year, I did Helena in A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Oh, yeah.
That's the soprano, right?
Never been in that show, but sure.
Helena. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the other one. Okay, yeah. Sorry, it's been a while. And then my final semester, we did Eugene Onegin in Russian. And that was like...
And you sang Triquet.
That's... Huh? I
sang
sang
Triquet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I worked on my Russian-French accent. It was really good.
There you go. Perfect. Obviously, Tatiana. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's say this. Technically, what type of things did you adjust from the work that you had done at Oberlin and in high school, let's say, and then working with a man and being, just a little bit older at this point at Maryland? What were some of the technical things that you were making adjustments with?
Embouchure was a big one. The shape of my mouth.
How so?
So when I used to go up, I used to get pretty wide, a little bit of a spread going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I never had trouble with high notes. Like it wasn't that I couldn't make them. They just had a very bright quality to them, and which was good because I had been singing such a dark way at the end of my high school. Monica trying to get me to have more, what's it called? Squealo and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So I had this kind of like really wide mouth placement on my top. And I remember Dominic was like, Jen, I really like your high notes. He said, but can we maybe get a little more height in them? And I was like, oh, what's that mean? And so we started doing like, I don't know. And I was probably going like a much wider.
Right.
So I want you to get your mouth like a little more taller, like versus And I think we went up to like a G sharp. And I was like, okay. I was like, I don't know, Dom. I mean, I think I can try this. I don't know if I can do much more than a G sharp. He's like, okay, well, you just keep trying. And I was like, okay. So I go home to my roommate, Aaron Aguilera, who was my Onegin too. This was our first semester. That was one of my best friends from undergrad. And I said, Aaron, I need your opinion. Which one do you like more? And he's like, oh. He's like, I really like the second one. And I was like, really? And he goes, yeah, why? And so I said, well, Dom wants me to do this mouth thing where I get like more this way.
More north-south instead of east-west?
North-south. And I was like, he's like, well, does it hurt? And I said, no. I said, it just feels different. And this is something, ask yourself, like as a singer, like on the younger, if you're newer to singing and all that, does it hurt or does it feel different? Because one is okay, one is not.
Right. If it hurts, please let me know. Let's talk about that. I don't want you to be doing something that hurts you.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, if you like it, And Dom likes it. I'm going to keep trying. So I, ob- obviously I sing like to the top of my range now with a north-south space. The only time I start to get re-wide again is when I'm going into a D, because, and that's
The
like
super top.
super, super top.
Right.
Even my C's are going to be tall.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a little more open bite on the top, but I'm not going to spread for a C. But for a D, I personally have got to get that really stretched inside smile thing going on.
What do
Uh,
you feel like changes in the timbre if you don't do that? Like what do you feel, how does that benefit you on that, on the high, we're talking about high D.
yeah, don't have to try
I
that.
don't want you to sing that. No, you're already blowing out the mic when you sing because your voice is so present, but
Sorry.
it's okay.
So the D is going to be for me that what changes is the body of that note. It's really slim. It's much more slimmer. It still is going to be like, your laser beam kind of sound. It's going to be in this really weird kind of place. Like if you were to like hum in a way,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of spot, it just gets small focused and really like that.
And so you feel like spreading here, like people talk about biting the apple, right?
Yeah, yeah, because it's never going to be a super super spread for me, but it's going to be wider than my high C or my B flat.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I have to think I can't. When I was a young artist, I covered the soprano from the Carmina Burana.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing the Dolcissime, and like I was like, oh, look at me, I got a D, I got a D, because I had not really sung D's much, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
still don't sing D's much. They don't come up in my repertoire too often. And so the next thing I was supposed to cover was Gretel, who has a D, and it's a very different D than the Dolcissime D, right? And
Yeah.
I got a D now. I got this. Oh, like, oh God. And
Like I can't speak for a little while.
Ainsley, he was our coach at Portland Opera, and he's like,
Oh,
oh,
Seth Hoff just said hi. Speaking of Portland Opera, he said, I'm browsing,
hey,
have to head out, but I love seeing you too. We love you too, Seth.
yes. So Rob goes, oh, Dolly, that was the loudest, straightest high D I think I've ever heard.
Rob Ainsley? Oh, I love Rob Ainsley. He's at WNO now, Washington National.
Yeah, and I go,
He's so great.
I'm done for the day. And he goes, oh, darling, you're fine. Keep going. And I was like, no, 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 no. I gotta go. I'm done. Like I thought I like ripped a vocal fold in half. It felt so awful.
Wow.
I was like, blood. Like it was horrible. So I realized I can't approach a high D the way I approach B flat B or even C. Like
Right.
it's for me, it's a different beast.
Turns over in a different way.
It turns over in a very different way for me. And everyone talks about like my upper extension. Like I would say for a solid 10 years, probably like all of school, all of young artist programs are like, you've got an upper extension. I know it. And I mean, you and I have joked around where you're like, hit this note. And I'm like,
Yeah. When we try to, we'll have a little Queen of the Night competition.
night. I always try to hit that F and I'm like, I'm too low because I could have put that in. I mean, it's horrible.
Here we go.
Oh, jeez.
Do it. You got it. You got it. You can do it this time. This time.
Nope, never comes out. Never, never once. Never.
Oh, that's so good though. Oh my God, that's amazing.
I have this little coloratura friend. She's 4'10" and she can sing high B flats above high C.
Oh
And
wow.
she's so kind to me because sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sing the Queen of the Night stuff and you sing the so
You just let her do the work for you. Oh my God, that is too funny.
never been there. No teacher has ever found it or helped me find it. It's not there.
Well, I just, certain chords were built. I mean, you have in your professional career, you've sung roles like Madama Butterfly. You have sung roles like Tatiana. You've sung, what are some of the other, I mean, you mentioned L'Amico Fritz. What are
Don't,
some of the other fuller?
yeah. Fritz, of course, you got Mescagni there. Love
Yeah,
that stuff. I love
Nedda,
hmm,
Nedda.
Nedda. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Like I said, I don't. None of those roles are asking me to like pop up to an F.
No,
Now, there's one I remember because I've sung and covered Violetta, and Dominic, he used to sing Germont, like that was his calling card. And so right when I got my first time to sing that, he was like, "All right, Jen, now we're not even gonna try the E flat." He's like, "You're not an E flat Violetta," and I was like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Just forget it."
you know, I have to say that, like, I mean, over the years, that's a role that I've sung a lot,
Yeah.
and without question, if it's a soprano who is either, let's say, I've only sung maybe a handful of Violettas,
Mm-hmm.
there's such insecurity surrounding that one note at the end of Act One. And I'm like, I tell every one of them, I'm like, no one cares. I
Yeah.
said, what they will care is if you try to sing it and it's not good, right? If you sing everything else wonderfully, and then at the end of that Act One aria, you choose what's actually written, they're going to love it. It's impressive. It's great.
Beautiful.
It actually works with what she's saying and how that Act One flows. I don't know.
And
I think so. For any soprano who thinks that they need to sing an E flat at the end of Sempre Libera, I just don't buy it. I mean, if you've got it, you want to show it, great. If you don't, great. Who cares?
this is my thing too. I mean, the Sempre Libera just pales in comparison to the All Mommy Alfredo. Like that is where I mean, there's so many
No.
amazing moments in that opera. Like
Yeah, I mean, one of them's 10 minutes long, one of them's about 10 seconds long, but yeah, no. Oh, you know,
Mommy Alfredo. It's like I'm sorry for me personally, it's just the best part of the whole night. Like
oh,
I
it's amazing. It's unbelievable.
just like gush, just ugh, oh, it's so good. It's so good. And then of course, you know, there's the Adieu de Passade. I mean, like all that stuff. Like
Third act, yeah.
that one note define the whole role.
You can't. You can't. Yeah.
Oh. So it was nice though to get the permission to like not sit there and try to scream out E flat every time.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah,
And especially from a teacher who had had such experience with the role. I mean, you know,
yeah,
not Violetta, but you know, being on stage next to her.
yeah. And as you know, he knows my voice and he knows what it does, and I'm okay. I'm okay with not having a stratospheric high voice. I'm fine with that.
Good. Talk to me a little bit about what you learned along the way as far as breathing goes.
Okay, so that's kind of interesting for me because most of my life I had been taught to take these really big breaths, like breathe to your pelvis, you know, fill up your back, like breathe low, everything's filling. And I was getting to a point, I remember I was in an audition and I was singing Dove Sono, and I was taking these really big breaths. And I started to see like little black spots as I was singing. And I was like,
Wow.
and I grabbed the piano because I felt like I was going to like fall over. And I just didn't know what was going on. And at the time, this would have been like, yeah, at the Met when I was in Parsifal, Lenore Rosenberg had mentioned that she thought I should have a lesson with Deb Birnbaum.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember because it was like, you know, the lessons are expensive. And I was like, oh God, I have to go have this lesson to like, because someone important told me I had to go have this lesson. You know, when Lenore Rosenberg tells you to go have a lesson, you go do it, right?
Yeah.
So I go to this lady, Deb, and we're doing some singing and we're talking about breathing. And she was like, I just think she's brilliant in how she approaches breathing, kind of like with your body type and stuff. I'm very, very short-waisted, like very short-waisted and pretty like big rib cage. And so she was like, when you breathe, like where do you feel that you're stopping the tank filling up? And I was like, you know, take this huge breath. And I was like, you know, like right around here. She's like, that seems like a lot of air. And I'm like, well, because everyone tells you take these big breaths, fill your back up, fill, you know, everything opens, everything expands. But it kind of gets to a point where it's maybe a a little too much and you're getting like subglottal pressure and stuff like that, like
Yeah.
too much air, and then not using all the air that you've just sucked out of the room, and
And
then
then you
take
have to take another breath.
another breath and another breath, and you're stacking, and then you're singing the end of Netta and you're cracking on a G because you've got all this pressure because you're
That's
just
my,
got out. So she talked to me about feeling like imagining that my breath tank was like a rectangle, and like when I could feel it at like my first rib, she's like, for most things that's probably enough.
mm-hmm.
And we sang a phrase with that in mind, and I completely sang the phrase. It's not, I didn't not have enough air. And so that kind of changed the way I thought about breathing, because I was just taking so much before and I wasn't using it. It was making me lightheaded.
Right.
And so that, but then of course, you can't really talk about just breathing because it's all part of the system. It's all part of a poncho.
Right.
So use that air, and obviously, you're not going to sing like that. And you're like, you're not going to like glottal. But when Mia did the resistance on your arm, like something I used to think about was taking a bow and arrow and shooting it into water, and it goes. So
Right.
it's moving, but there's resistance, right? And that's like how I think about the breath and the apajo and all that kind of stuff. Is you have this good tension, this light engagement of your abdominal muscles. Like if you kind of like, if you kind of dig in like right here,
Mm-hmm.
you can see and feel that there's this little whoop with the solar plexus right there. Whoop.
Right. Right.
And it's not it's not this, like, it's
Yeah,
not
it's not like it's not even like you're doing a crunch. It's not like you're trying to pick up a 400-pound piano.
yeah, it's a light engagement. Mr. Miller used to make people try to pick up the piano. It's funny you said that. But yeah, it's this light engagement of those abdominal muscles. And as soon as you start laughing, you boop, 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 and that's what I said. You laugh, you pick up something heavy, you poo.
A baby crying.
Baby crying. Yeah.
That whole systemic. I mean, there's a reason why babies can cry really loudly for a
Forever.
very long time.
This part, do babies lose their voices? No,
No.
because they know how to do it. We know how to make these sounds. We just complicate it. We sing instead of just singing.
Right. Right.
And
Good point.
I really believe that it's like, Miss May used to say something along, it's like, come si parla e canto. We sing how we speak. No, we sing.
Speak as you sing. Yeah.
Yeah, like you sing as you speak. And so instead of like, especially with men, when you're working with men and they're like, hey, yeah, okay, and now I'm gonna sing. And they pull way back, and
Yeah.
resonance is gone, and everything, you can just feel that they feel everything right there.
Yeah.
And like, you just spoke in such a clear, projected way. Why
Are you
change
changing that?
thing now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I feel sometimes singing is a bad word. People. Oh, you want me to sing it? Oh, I know what that means. It's like their tongue's pulled back. They got the hair dryer with the diffuser on it, and they're just like blowing air over a mesh screen, and it's like that's not the goal. That's not the goal.
No, I'm like, you got to project that. Don't make your singing like quieter than you're speaking.
Right. So well, first of all, you say this lady, Deb Birnbaum, is known in the industry as being such a specialist when it comes to
She's
breath
amazing.
efficiency and management.
She's amazing. I
Yeah.
love her.
So what does she talk about how to resist that air?
She just said once you get to that certain point, stop. Like, you got enough.
No. But I mean, once you're starting to sing and once you're starting to project, how do you manage resisting the air with the closure and the chords? Or did she talk about that?
I didn't talk about that. That's never been a thing that I've had to really think about too much.
You've never either over muscled in the throat or overblown too much air.
No, it's always, as soon as, like, I always think about, the air and the phonation is happening simultaneously, right? It's just happening.
Ideally, but not with everybody.
Ideally, yeah. So once I I I don't want to. I'm like, how do I word this? I always used to think I can do this if it were something a little bigger. I can do it because I used to say this. You're a smart singer. You're not gonna push. You're not gonna be something you're not. Don't
Right.
be something you're not. So
Right.
I never really tried to push so much because I just sang with what felt comfortable, if that
Mm,
makes sense. And I think we all know when we've started to push, we can feel like, oh, I'm getting to the brink. I'm getting to my, you want to like go kind of to the back wall, but you don't want to smack the back wall of a theater sort of thing.
sure. Sure.
So we didn't talk about that too much, Deb and I. But I just think when talking about the airflow coming out, it's so much of if you're gonna make the snake sound like the TS, or if you're gonna build up sound like with a D and you go duh duh, you can feel a little. You can, or you've mentioned you sometimes you talk about a football thing up or huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can feel your chords close, and then when you release that sound again, you can feel a little bit of breath pressure.
Yeah.
And so when I have thought about singing, or when I have students that have had a hard time creating creating phonation, we do certain things like that. Duh, duh, because you have to have some closure and some buildup so you can create some sound.
Sure.
So, so I mean, there's lots of different ways that I've worked with that with people. Again, the snake thing, because you can feel your abs engage, and you can
Sure.
also you can feel the pressure build up. And then we're gonna add some sound to that. See, see, see.
Right.
And sometimes it's just taking that little bit of chord closure for them to feel that build up, so they can phonate.
And
That
then release.
release, yeah, that gets them. Oh. Now I feel what it feels like to use my breath to project sound.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Perfect sense. Do you have any helpful tricks on teaching someone to roll, or rather trill their R's?
Okay. Well, for me, flipping an R, I'm better with helping people flip an R.
Well, yeah, because it's easier.
Yeah. But there's a lot of people that have trouble flipping R's too.
Okay.
But for the
Uh,
rolling, wide tongue on the back, like you can feel the sides of your tongue touching the back molars on the top.
Wide tongue, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of wide tongue. And then you have to have that wide tongue that goes into a little bit of a focused tongue in the front. And that your tongue is on the upper roof of your mouth, right behind the teeth. And there's enough tension to keep it there, but enough relaxation to allow your breath to go and let your tongue move. I also think something that's important is sometimes students will disassociate sound with the roll, like the rolling of the R, and they'll be like,
Right, right. Or
and
what confuses me is when they're able to do but not. I'm like, all you're doing is misplacing the resistance to the air from here to here.
I'm like not a good lip triller.
Well,
There,
you have to make sure that the air speed is fast enough, right? That's the ingredient that you hadn't mentioned yet, is that the air speed has to be fast enough to create that
that I'm
trill.
wrong on my lip trills.
Maybe.
No, you're right though. It has to be a constant airflow. That's another
Sure.
thing. It has to be a constant airflow. Or you don't have anything buzzing or trilling.
Right.
Um, but yeah, those kind of tongue placement things I think you have to talk about, because if somebody's like putting their tongue below their bottom teeth, and I mean, that obviously you can't roll. And these are things sometimes that we just assume people know. There have been so many things that I've learned through teaching that I assumed a student knew. Like I thought, oh, that was so obvious, right? Everyone, I don't need to discuss that. And
Mm.
you're like, oh, maybe not. But yeah, a good amount of airflow, and it has to be like singer airflow, not just
Right. It has to be connected.
airflow. Directed airflow. I think that's actually important behind the tip of the tongue. Like if you can direct your air to the tip of the tongue and
Right.
voice the R, don't just. I mean, you can flick your tongue around, obviously, but I think it helps to voice the R.
Sure. Yeah, I think so too. I think when you, as soon as once you find that you can actually roll an R or trill an R like on pitch. I remember, I think that was, I'll just say it was Mia. I think it was Mia. She taught me how, when I'm singing in Italian or whatever, when you roll the R on the pitch of the word that you're singing, you know?
Yes, Mia talked to me about that too, and that's what I was just gonna say. When you're singing, sing your R pitch through your R. Like,
Yeah.
don't disconnect that sound. And again, that seems like, oh, obvious, right? I should do that. But sometimes it takes someone saying it, reminding you.
Oh yeah. And it's like if you were to take a iPhone and you zoom in on that one moment, like in "Ah, per sempre," you're actually rolling the before you open up to the vowel. And if it doesn't happen that way, "Ah, per sempre," it's like not enough time is occurring in that moment that allows the listener and allows the singer or the audience rather, to hear the voice. And once the voice stops, the audience doesn't hear you, right? You don't
Right.
make a whole lot of sound on consonants.
No.
The audience gets to hear you when you're singing vowels, or if you're trilling on an R, or I don't
Maybe
know.
L's. You can.
Right, singing through an N or an M or an L or whatever.
One.
So, all of this to say that we would love to be on stage utilizing all of these skill sets that we have to bring our art to audiences. So unfortunately, it looks like that might be shut down for the remainder of this entire season. The Met has definitely led the way with shutting down its complete 2021 season, announced yesterday. So how are you keeping busy in the meantime? I mean, everyone's talking about the side hustle. I know how you're doing it, and I want everyone to see the incredible art that you are creating with your side hustle. Wasn't like the first thing that you did, you were like, you were redoing your mom's kitchen, which, I mean, that in itself is a gigantic side hustle. Anyone need a contractor? Call Jen Forni. Jen Forni, contractor at work.
Diva Demolition.
Diva Demolition. That's
Demolition.
not a company name. I don't know what is. That's amazing.
Yeah. Uh,
Huh? And you
the
have
other
like
thing is,
you on stage and caught with like a hard hat.
yes, a hard hat with little horns will go real.
Yes. Oh my God. I mean, that plays a little bit into the stereotypical opera singer, but okay, that's fine.
Said cliche. But the other idea, because my sister did like, she was really the foreman because she's had way more experience, and I was like,
You were the workhorse.
I was the work, but she was the workhorse too. I mean, it was so much work, but
Trust
she
me. Two people doing the job that y'all did on that. I mean,
was
talk
crazy.
about it. You went from like the subfloor, the
Okay. So we were replacing my mom's cabinets in her house that was built in 1870, right? We had some people that were going to come rip out the cabinets, and we were going to put new cabinets in. When they ripped them out, it was worst case scenario. Like, the entire floor was rotted, the wall was rotted. I mean, it was just so bad.
my God.
My sister's like, oh, I guess the only reason why no one's fallen through the floor is because there's plywood, linoleum, linoleum. It was like this thick chunk of glue plastic. And so I guess like an elephant could have walked on it and the whole floor would have just went boop, boop. you know. Um,
Wow.
it was insane. So we were like, well, because I mean, once you start ripping it apart and you see, you're like, oh, well, we have to fix this. So no contractors would come out for like less than a $20,000 bid, and we didn't really have $20,000 to do this project. Not to mention what needed to be done would have been like somewhere between around 40,000 because it was insanely bad. So my sister's like, well, I guess we're just we're gonna have to do this ourselves. So we removed the wall that was completely rotted and so much damage, and there was some things I don't even want to talk about. But we removed this wall, me, her, and her husband, and he works a full-time job, so he was like helping on the weekends to like help remove the heavy stuff, right?
Your sister's husband.
Strong, but it helps to sometimes have a third person like that wants to swing
Sure.
the hammer. So we removed the wall, we cleaned everything out, we removed the floor, there was no foundation, like in most of the wall. There were some boulders, some chunks of wood, and then like a 4 or 5 foot section with nothing in the middle of the wall. So we're like, oh, I guess we're gonna have to put a foundation in. So we made a mold, and Colin was like mixing all this cement, and I'm in there like, like smashing in the cement into the form that we made. And I've got my level out, and I'm like making sure that the foundation's level, because as I've learned, on top of your foundation is a seal plate. And then there are some other boards, and I forget exactly what they're called, but I know the way it goes. But your studs and stuff, your floor joists come over to that plate from the pre-existing floor. So if your foundation is not level with your floor joists, you know, you have a floor that's not, do you need to go? Yeah, my student wanted to listen, so she's here.
Oh, great. Okay.
But so everything had to be level. So we put a foundation in. We put floor joists in. We put studs in. We hung sheetrock. We always wanted a window in the kitchen, so we thought, why not? So we cut a hole in the wall, reinstalled a window. The
Wow.
70s door was super, super small and like janky and broken. So we had to cut out the entire door and put a new door in. We put in a hardwood floor, tongue and groove. We got the cabinets that we thought were assembled, not assembled. So my sister, that's when I thought my sister was going to lose it. She's like, I think I'm going to throw up right now. Because, you know, it was just a lot of work already. And so we put all these cabinets together. We put them up. And then we got to the countertop thing. And I was like, what are we going to do for countertop? And so I saw this ad for epoxy. And I thought, oh, this is so beautiful. Like, this is so cool. This is so neat. And they were making countertops with epoxy. And if you don't know what epoxy is, it's resin, and you mix these two parts, and it's sticky, like super sticky. And then it forms into a hard piece of resin. And so that's kind of becoming my side hustle, because I ended up building my mom's countertops out of like actually building the countertop, because you have to pour the epoxy onto something, right? So I built my mom's countertops. I had never even used a skill saw before, never held one. And now all of a sudden I'm in the garage with these giant sheets of MDF on like a wood pallet, 4 inches off the floor. And I'm like got a pencil, and I'm like putting these lines on here and like cutting everything freehand. I can't believe not only did I do it, but they actually turned out so well.
I saw the pictures. If anyone's watching hadn't seen it, they're on your Facebook page, right? Like some of the things that you've done.
Yeah, there's some videos. I haven't posted the final finished product. I gotta do that. But
But
yeah,
and then one of the things that you did was with that epoxy, you decided to decorate you had a white piano bench, right?
so before I decided to like pour my mom's countertops, I thought, well, maybe I should like work with this material on something small, see what it feels like to work with this material, and if it's like actually doable for me. So I got some epoxy, and I wanted to do something kind of colorful and musical with my piano bench. So this is what I did with my piano bench.
That's your first try.
This is my first try.
And I'm sorry, but like to my eye, that looks like the coolest piano bench I've ever seen. It looks awesome. It looks like a mixture between like Starry Night and like some kind of like galaxy kind of cool thing. And like I love the colors. I just love that. And I remember seeing that and being like, I want one. And then I told you, I was like, you should start a business where you just
Seriously, I love doing these so much now that I'm going to offer these. So if anyone is interested, just shoot me a message, and we can. And I like it because it's what I love about the piano bench. Obviously, we're musicians, so most of us have a piano bench in our house and stuff. But I like the size of it because it's big enough to create something bigger and beautiful,
unique and
but not
cool. And
so
yeah.
like you can't ship it or something.
My friend Angie in Yarborough, Angie Yarborough Ramos, who lives in Lubbock, Texas. She goes, I want one.
DM me.
Angie,
Call
hit her
direct.
up. What'd you
DM.
say?
You say right? DM me. Does that mean?
Angie.
No, when you tell someone to send them a message on Facebook, send you a message, it's called DM, right?
Yeah, direct message.
Okay, yeah, send me, DM me.
DM or PM, private.
Oh, PM me? No, that sounds weird. I think the DM one sounds more right. I'm so like not up to speed on certain lingo. So yes, send me
I
a
hear
message.
you. Angie goes, I'll slide into those DMs. I think that's like, Angie's so funny. I think that's the lingo. She's down with the words of the kids.
So I loved this so much. It's like it's so beautiful. Like because it's in person, you can really the light. It's not an image. I'm not putting an image down and then putting epoxy over it. I'm pouring the image. The image is the pour.
Right.
You're pouring lines of color. You're moving lines of color. So there's depth and it's very durable. The cats got had a hard time getting used to this. They would like run up and jump on the piano bench and slide off. Oh, it's but this is a
Good.
like super slick and just shiny and like glass. It's beautiful product. Like I'm like obsessed now. I'm not gonna lie, obsessed. So I ended up doing my mom's countertops. I ended up doing like a matte finish on hers to look more like honed marble. I can't believe how well it turned out. It's so beautiful. I can't wait to post pictures. But my dad's former hospice nurse, she was like, "Oh, you're like," my mom was telling her about it, and she goes, "Well, I want my countertops done." So,
So
so
is she going to hire you to do it?
I actually went to her house and I like looked at the kitchen. I was like, okay, okay. And the thing about epoxy that's super cool is you can go over existing countertops, but there's something really weird going on with her existing countertop. It was like that when she moved in, and it looks like there was an island that was like, I mean, a peninsula cut off. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, there's a weird trim thing. Like we gotta get rid of this. So I'm gonna be ripping the whole countertop out and rebuilding hers like my mom's. But I'm excited because we're doing a live rock edge opposed to the smooth edge.
The
So
thing I love about you, Jen, is that you can get excited about that. Like that excites you. Like you can, in the face of like everything that's sort of happening right now in the world of singing. I
Mhm.
love that you can like pivot and look over at the idea of building countertops and be like, oh, I'm excited because it's a rock edge and I get to do a new rock edge. It's going to be great.
Did
That's
okay.
so cool.
I became obsessed. I'm not gonna lie. I was watching these epoxy videos, and I was like, I closed my eyes and I would see epoxy in my mind, and then I was petting Luna, and I was like, "Oh, Luna, you look so beautiful. Like this would be."
Do you talk to her in a kind of a lower voice like that? Oh, Luna.
In my mind, I was talking about dark marble because Luna's like chocolate. She's like
Mm,
chocolate brown and black, and then she's got this creamy color on her, and she looks
mm.
like a piece of chocolate marble cake. And I was like, "Oh, Luna, you would be such a beautiful like marble combination." And it's just like, Jen, you need to
Hmm.
get away from the epoxy for a
Step away from the epoxy.
way. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I was just like every little thing. It was kind of taking over. Like, certain things I can't even tell you because
Mhm. Well, let's just say this. Let's say this. Let's wrap up with the idea that how incredible it is for you that you've been able to take your artistic expression and transition it into something that is not only something that you're obviously very excited about, but also that somebody else gets to enjoy. Like you're creating pieces of art, and I think that's amazing.
it's functional and it's something somebody needs, but it's also something that's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah,
And I always think when you can do something that creates art in something that's functional, why not? Of course.
right,
And
right.
this kind of I don't know, COVID's been so crazy and awful and hard. But I will say, this kind of brought me back to a place when I was younger and I used to do more art, not singing art, but like, painting. And I
Well,
worked
you
with
mentioned too that your dad even was like, getting you out there and helping you paint or you were getting you to help him remodel and stuff like that. And so,
artist. He was totally an artist. Like the things he did with that house were insane. One thing he did in his bedroom, he like slapped all this plaster up around this half moon window they had, and he like inserted all these ceramic porcelain angels in the wall. And he had his little, Sistine Chapel or whatever, and then he
hmm,
was up there all the time, like painting all the little angels. I mean, there was like 30 angels on the wall. It was a very large wall, but
wow.
he was so he loved art. He was very artistic and he loved music. And my whole family is my mom loves music. My mom sings. So I mean everything's better with art because it's that we're all alive, but it's those beautiful things that make life worth living. We can all we're alive. Thank God we're alive. But it's just so much better when you have something that makes it worth living.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you being on the show. I felt like this is the longest episode I've ever done because I just looked at the clock. It's been an hour and a half.
oh.
I usually keep it at an hour, but like we were just talking and I just now looked up to the clock and I was like, oops. But you know what? It was great. I am so, so, so appreciative of your time. And thank you for coming on here and talking with me. And thank you for like opening up about technical stuff. I feel like sometimes singers are a little guarded about how, and that's the whole point of Under the Hood, right? I like it when we get into that. So I really appreciate you
the way
going there.
the way I feel about it, I don't know if what I say and what I do might not work for somebody. Clearly, everybody's different. Everybody has their own approach. These are the things I think about, and
Yeah,
these are things that have worked for me, and I've got good results with students with them. So that's kind of how I feel like that. I'm in no way, shape, or form. This is the only way. Um,
sure.
but I love to talk about this stuff. I mean, so much of so much of grad school was. I mean, I also lived with Andrew Owens, the tenor.
Oh yeah, the tenor, yeah.
It was me, Andrew, and Aaron, and we would be like listening to old recordings, like, and who do you think this is? Who do you think this is? And we were always talking technique, always, like always. I think anyone that's when you're afraid to talk about this stuff, or you're like, oh, I have my way. Don't talk to me about anything. I just think you're doing yourself a disservice
Yeah.
because surely we don't know everything, and somebody might have something great to offer. You know.
This is the whole premise. I mean, that's the exact reason I do this show is to maybe at some point in one of these interviews somebody says something that somebody listening it clicks for and they're like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing, like that's my experience or that's what I hear.
Right.
That's interesting. You mentioned listening to recordings and then commenting on them and stuff.
So,
So Brian Email, if you're still listening, my boy Brian and I are going to start a new show, and we're gonna go through different recordings, historic recordings, and not necessarily review them, but certainly comment on them and talk about how much they meant to us in our education. And I think it would be fun to bring people on and have them join in. So we'll certainly get you to come on and join
I
us.
love it. I love it. I want to totally geek out about old singers and recordings.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
It's the
Well,
best.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun. And yeah, have a great one.
You too. All right.
Bye.
Okay.